Good evening or morning or whatever time of day it is that you're listening to this podcast. This is Matt, joined by Kenny on this lovely Tuesday evening. How are you doing tonight, Kenny?
I'm doing great. Audacity is being a little bitch, but we straightened her out.
That's right. You just had to shut her down, put her to sleep for 2 seconds, bring her back up, and she's good to go.
Very dark right off the bat.
That's right. We like to get right into it. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Intangibles, a podcast where we talk about exactly what makes us the best players of the games that we play.
And why that's hard to see in statistics.
Yeah, why we need an hour-long podcast every week to tell you that we're good, basically, rather than letting our gameplay speak for itself.
Well, the games we play won't tell you that, so we have to.
That's right. It's a must. It's a requirement. We're locked into this now, and so we're off. We're going to start this week, just like every week, with a play of the game.
Poke chat, poke chat.
And I'm actually very interested to see what your play of the game is, because you and I spent the weekend together. We spent Friday night, Saturday, Sunday morning together at our parents' house. And my play of the game actually comes from a shared experience that we had this weekend. And I'm curious if that crossed your mind as well.
Probably not, just because I had this picked out for
Beautiful.
a week.
Well, why don't we let you start us off with your play of the game?
Okay, so I have a dual play of the game. My play of the game goes to, my nomination, I should say, we haven't decided who gets it yet, goes to Mansour, Bahrami, and the YouTube recommendation algorithm.
I was going to, so before you actually gave that info, I was going to make a joke that you're pulling an Amber on us here, and instead of picking one card or whatever, and you're in Red Mage, Blue Mage, she brings 6 to the table to talk about all of them.
Yes, but realistically, I'm giving it to... Where's my real recommendation go? We should get into it, and then I'll say where the actual nomination is. So, YouTube randomly recommended a video to me. It is of a tennis player named Mansour Bahrami, and at time of recording, and Intangibles first, I'd like to show you a clip of Mansour Bahrami, the clip that was recommended to me. So if you are at home, you can follow along by just going to YouTube and searching Mansour Bahrami, and it's spelled like Mansour, Wimbledon. So let's give it a watch.
Oh, it's an old dude.
Yes, so excited to get
It's
your reaction
an old
here.
dude. I guess I should say he's an old dude.
Enjoy a quick sampling of Matt's reactions to the video.
Oh my god. I don't even know what he just did there. Oh, what? This dude's like a magician. I can't even keep up with it in real time. Did the no-look slice to the corner over there? My god. It just makes me think of, oh my god. Does he practice these shots at home or what? It makes me think of, in a way, in high school when people would complain about, slices and, very different tempo type stuff. Because everything he's doing is like a look away, or a tempo change with a huge slice to the side. Oh my gosh. The psych out. What? I don't even know how he does this. I do love his groans too. Yeah! Sorry about this one. My god. It's definitely the most exciting tennis that I've watched in a while. And
yeah.
It's not because it's fast paced. It's interesting. 26 strokes last
Very
rally.
inventive.
Oh, the behind the back. Oh, the under the legs. Behind the back again. Oh my god. I mean, I guess he probably hasn't been actually playing in the real tournaments for a while, but nonetheless, that was wild.
Yeah, so he is a Iranian guy. And he was really into tennis, obviously. During the Islamic Revolution, they basically banned tennis, and so he took up backgammon professionally for a little while over there, but missed tennis so much, I guess, that he moved to France so he could pursue that. took all his life savings with him, and to try to quickly get enough funds to make this happen, he gambled it, lost it all. Eventually started playing pro. He was mostly played in the ATP. I think he made it to the finals of the French Open doubles. But mostly he made his name after he retired effectively from pro play, doing invitational events and senior events and exhibition events. And he is just all sass and mustache and trick shots and showmanship. He's basically, I was trying to figure out like a quick way to describe him to someone who had not heard of him. Imagine if Wario got really athletic and just devoted his whole life to Mario Tennis after he retired.
What are you trying to say about Wario's body?
Nothing. I'm just saying he's not the most athletic guy out there. But yeah, he's great. And while I was looking this guy up, there's a great quote that I ran across for the first time, which is, "Old age and treachery will always beat youth and exuberance." And that's this guy. Like, I think as far as like the intangible play of the game, it's just his sheer showmanship. Like, he has that extra that makes him great and makes him really popular. Like, he is, like you said when you were reacting to it, this is the most exciting tennis that you've seen in a long time. Same for me too. Like, I like watching professional tennis, but this is something else. Like, this could get people who don't care about tennis to be excited about tennis.
Right, yeah, it's entertainment by itself, like regardless of the sport, it's fun to watch. Whereas professional tennis, if you don't really understand or care about tennis, you're not gonna enjoy it.
So Mansour Bahrami, my nominee for Play the Game.
That was a hoot. That makes me want to go play some tennis.
Yeah, all right, so what do you got to compete with that?
Tough to compete, but I think I've got a good one, and you're going to remember this quite well. So on Saturday, we did a cube draft. We did a Magic cube draft. There's actually 4 of us, so it was a big cube draft for us. A lot of the times it's just 2 players or 3 who are involved. I ended up drafting... It was kind of a clusterfuck, honestly. So the first pack of the draft was lots of blue, lots of artifact, and I've learned from your ways. I found some cards in that section that I really liked, and that's kind of where I landed initially. And then pack number 2, there was basically none of that. I ended up like really rethinking, what am I going to do here? And I drafted a ton of green and black in pack number 2. So I got a hodgepodge of shit at this point. Don't know how it's going to work. Pack 3 kind of get a little bit more of each of those things. But at the end of the day, I landed more in the artifact area than anything, with a good influence of blue, and then I had to kind of fill with green. So my deck was completely built around basically a couple of cards, a couple of ways to get artifacts out of my deck, and one of those artifacts was the Blightsteel Colossus. For those of you who aren't familiar with Magic or who don't know what the Blightsteel Colossus is, he's this big-ass, expensive artifact creature. He costs 12 colorless to put into play. He's an 11/11 with, Trample, Infect, something, Indestructible...
Yep.
So basically, he's a very powerful creature. He can win you the game pretty quickly.
If he hits your opponent, and even if they block one of the damage, but if he hits your opponent, they die instantly.
Right, yeah.
It's a one-hit kill.
They take that poison damage and you win the game. So that was kind of my win condition. And it didn't work out for me in large part during the day. But there was one game that I was playing against you, and I had Tinker in my hand, which was one of those cards that allowed me to search for and put into play an artifact card. So it would have given me, for the cost of an island plus 2 colorless and a sacrificial artifact, it would have given me the Colossus to bring out there and womp you with.
Yep.
And I had put an artifact in play on the previous turn, so I'm like, all right, here we go, geared up. I'm going to just draw my card. I'm going to Tinker, I'm going to search for him. We're going to win this game. And what happens? I draw the Blightsteel Colossus.
For those who don't know, in Cube, you can only have 1 copy of each card. There only is 1 copy of each card, basically. So it's not like, I'll just go get one of my other Blightsteel Colossi. This is the only one, so now I can't do it.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I draw it. I can no longer search my library for it. It totally screws up my Tinker play that I have in my head. And I kind of expressed this to you, this frustration. I was like, god damn it. Which is funny because what I did was I had another artifact creature called the Aether Searcher. It's a 5/4. When you draft it, it enables you to basically call out the next draft pick that you have. And when you play Aether Searcher, you can grab that next card you drafted out of your deck and put it into play for free, basically. So that was my backup play. And again, I was frustrated. I'm thinking, shit, like I could have won the game here with Blightsteel Colossus. Instead, I've got Aether Searcher. It puts Frost Titan into play. And it's just not what I was hoping for. But what I didn't factor in, and what I found out after the game was over, was that if I hadn't drawn cards that way, if I hadn't put the Aether Searcher into play and put the Frost Titan into play, and subsequently tapped down your multi-land, I would have lost the game, basically. So when that Frost Titan comes into play, it has an ability where I can tap a permanent that an opponent controls, and it stays tapped the next turn. So I did that to a tri-land that Kenny had, and thinking to myself, this, if he has a specific need there, that'll prevent that. So tap that down. And the game progresses, I end up winning, and Kenny tells me at the end of the game, basically, that had I searched for the Blightsteel Colossus instead and put it into play, on the next turn, he would have had enough mana up to play, was it Dak Faden you were going to play?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so he was going to play a card, a Planeswalker, I believe, that has an ability to basically take control of a permanent that I own. So I would have played the Colossus, right? I would have played the Colossus. On the very next turn, he would have said, haha, fuck you.
Yoink.
That's mine, and he would have destroyed me. So I literally would have lost the game if I had played it the way that I wanted to, the way that I intended.
If you hadn't gotten that unlucky draw.
Exactly. And you gave the sermon basically from our childhood of good luck, bad luck, who knows, only time will tell, basically. And that was very much the case here. It wasn't until after the game and talking with you that it became clear that I would have lost that game without that draw. So the play of the game is, it's kind of it's an intangible play of the game, as it should be, but I'm giving it to the Colossus for being on top of my deck at that point, and literally like forcing me into a position where I ended up winning the game. Like that was, I can't imagine if I'd drawn any other artifact out of there and played it, you still could have played Dak Faden, you could have taken control of stuff. It wouldn't have been the Colossus, but that one move there literally enabled me to win and disabled you from actually being able to do what you wanted. So, I had thought about that over the weekend. I thought it was a perfect intangible play of the game because it's completely intangible. Like it's just pure dumb luck, basically. Like that's one card out of the 40 or whatever that was remaining in my deck happened to be the one that steered me in the direction to not lose.
Well, luck matters. There's a reason that sometimes LSV's nickname is Luck Skill Victory.
Luck coming first.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I think in sports or in games of any kind, like skill is so important, but oftentimes all that skill culminates in these moments where it just comes down purely to chance. Like if you think about some of like the great sports plays of all time, just how much luck goes into that deciding factor. You just have to put yourself in a position where you can get lucky. Yeah,
I guess so. I was that was the one game I took off of you in that series, I believe. So I will I'll relish in that semi victory.
Well, so how do we settle this? Who do we give this to?
Oh man, you know what I think we should do is we're gonna have a special guest on for our final segment. We should ask her of the two what she thinks, and we'll erase all of the content of describing it to her to the listeners, but we'll have her pick.
Okay. That's exciting.
So that we can have a third party, an unbiased third party, decide who wins.
Very exciting. I have a feeling that because it involves you and Magic, you are going to not win this one.
I think you're probably right. And you know what? We're going to find out soon.
All right. But until then,
it's on to the next segment. So today, for you, dear listener, we have an FAQ, a frequently asked question. And I selected a question that I've seen quite frequently in different forms. It's specific to Overwatch, and we're going to give it the most general form of the question, which is, when should I use my ultimate ability? This is something that, I know that you and I have talked about a lot, and you and I have gone through that learning curve to wherever we're at today. And it's a difficult question to answer because it does really depend, I think, on not only your role, but even your specific character and what their ability is when it comes down to it. There are some generalizations we can make, but
For sure.
At the end of the day, like, you do have to be specific to that character to really, really hone in on it.
And the specific game you're playing. Like the context of how the game is unfolding.
Absolutely true. Yeah, I'll put a big asterisk on this whole thing. That take this with a grain of salt. This is by no means a end all be all. This is how you should use it. This is just some general
It's kind of a
recommendations or
like a first pass over how and when to use your ult.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So
I guess as a little bit of background before you jump in here, for people who don't play Overwatch, you play a unique character, and as you play and do damage and heal people, you have an ultimate meter that builds up from 0 to 100%. When you get to 100%, you unlock your ultimate ability, which is a big game-changing move that your character does. And every hero has their own unique ultimate.
Yep, some are stinkers and some are great, and there's stuff anywhere in between.
For sure.
Which also feeds into, how important this is, but from a character-to-character standpoint. So when I think about this, I kind of broke it down into the roles, even though, again, it's not like it does. There's some characters, especially some of the newer ones, that don't fall into this generalization. Like, I think Baptiste is a really good example of one where it's like he's a support champ, but his ultimate is damage focused. So it's weird. But I'm going to generalize into roles first and foremost. And I'll be interested to hear what you think about what I'm saying here and how you would tweak it.
I will let you know.
Yeah, perfect. So from a support standpoint, typically those ults are good to help your team when they're in dire circumstances. So if you're just in a bad team fight where you need to dump out a lot more healing or try to keep the team alive through some sustained damage, potentially even countering an enemy ultimate ability, that becomes much more important in higher ranks, I would say, using them specifically to counter an enemy ultimate or an enemy ability that you're expecting to come through. But generally, I would say on the support side, you're thinking of it in terms of keeping your team up through some bad times. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would definitely agree. There's been many a time as Lucio when things are just looking bad, you're looking at your team's health bars and you just pop it.
Yep. And I think that Baptiste is an outlier. His ultimate is Amplification Matrix, where you're literally amplifying damage. He's amplifying his own heals too, but from a team perspective, that one is just kind of operates differently. Anna is kind of half and half, where yes, she's giving a damage boost to somebody in her team. You can also use it, and I've seen it used a lot of times as a rescue for someone on your team, where it's like, oh, my tank's getting low. Nano them, they get full health again, they're taking half damage, they're doing double damage, and we can sustain through this fight and try to continue on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, generally speaking, keeping your team up through the bad times.
Yep.
Damage ults, for the most part, are exactly what you would think. They're doing some damage. It kind of varies between the different champions as far as how that's output, but they're used typically to secure a kill or kills, win a team fight, and move on to the next one.
Yeah, I would say there are also a lot of zoning ults in this category as well. Especially as you improve a little bit, these big, giant, bomby kind of ults like a Junkrat Bomb, a Doomfist, Ground Slam, Pharah ults, like these just turn into everybody clears, like everybody scatter, like just run away from the area. But that in and of itself has value too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like you mentioned the Doomfist ult, and I think it's really funny to see how that changes from low rank to high rank, where like he's like a missile punch from the sky that can do damage. But at the highest ranks, it's literally just a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Right.
They just dive in, and when they're taking a lot of damage, they pop it so they can escape from the fight, basically. They're not even trying to secure a kill with it.
Yep.
Tanks are kind of a hybrid, I would say, in a way. A lot of the times, they are also there to help secure kills, or enable your team to secure kills. So I think of that as like a Reinhardt Shatter, where you lay a bunch of people on the ground.
Zarya.
What are some other tank ults? Yeah, Zarya, where you grab a bunch of people into one place and team can focus damage.
Sigma ult.
Exactly, kind of similar to the Zarya, where you're pulling people up in the sky, you're doing damage, but you're fixing them in place so your team can do damage. So they're either doing damage and or enabling your team to do damage more effectively. So from a really basic perspective, that's how those ults generally work and how you should kind of think about how you're going to use them.
You are right. They have the most variability on what they do along the tank role. So then you've got Wrecking Ball, which has this big minefield, which is a giant zoning tool. You've got Winston, which is like backline divey, clear the point, disruptive. You've got Orisa, which is just purely team fight advantage.
Damage boost, yep. Yeah, so they're a little bit more all over the place. But again, the whole idea, and I think what you should keep in your head, is that these ults are used to, especially on the damage and tank line, to secure kills in some form or fashion. Whether that's setting your team up to do it or doing it yourself.
For sure.
The other thing to really think about when you're like when to use your ult is what cooldowns or what abilities are out there that are going to screw up my ult, basically. Or what should I look for the enemy team to use so that I know I can get this ult off and secure a kill. That's important in the game in general. Like, cooldown tracking in general is something that if you get really good at all of your character cooldowns and tracking those, you're going to be good at the game because you're going to understand how it all interacts and how to plan around that stuff.
That's a great example of an intangible skill that is definitely important to climb to high levels.
Yeah, and I think of an example of like a Reinhardt with a Shatter against a team who's got a Mei. You want to wait until you see that Mei use her wall before you drop that Shatter. Because if that Mei hasn't used her wall, you haven't seen it go, and she's in the front lines or wherever you're fighting, and you start that animation of Shatter, and she just drops the wall in front of you, there's no way you're going to follow up on anything. You're probably not going to connect with anything, and you're just going to waste your ultimate. And you're wasting your ultimate against a standard cooldown move from an enemy, right? So you want to be thinking about what those moves are from other characters you're playing against specifically that are going to be able to completely negate the effectiveness of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, if your ult involves launching some kind of projectile, you got to keep your eyes on D.Va, because she can just eat up ults with her no second cooldown shield.
Yep, yeah, exactly. If you're a Zarya with Grav, if you're a Mei with her...
Blizzard.
Yeah, Blizzard. If D.Va's in the house, you got to make sure she uses that up, or you're just going to toss it right into her gullet.
Or just make sure she's not in your way of what you're trying to do.
Yep. So those are the two, like, that's kind of the biggest thing in my mind that you just need to be thinking about when you're going to use your ults. What's going to stop me from being effective here? Is it present or is it not present? And I think that's a really good place to start. It sounds super simple the way we describe it, but again, until you really know the characters and what their abilities are, that's still a very difficult thing to do.
I have a few other sort of unconnected pieces of advice too. I would say one, and this is one that I feel like in the last year or so you and I have leveled up on, which is don't be too precious about finding the perfect situation for your ult. Like, you do not have to wait until you can kill 4 people with your Junkrat tire. If you kill 1 person with your Junkrat tire, that's great. There were so many times when I was beginning to play, and let's say a Junkrat would kill just me alone with the ult, and I'd be like, you piece of shit, like wasting your ult on just killing me. But that is an effective use of it's like real simple, almost a guaranteed kill on 1 person. You can swing an entire fight by just doing that.
Yep, I think that's super important, and I literally wrote that as a trap that you can get into, is looking for that perfect moment to use your ult. If you just use it aggressively at the beginning of a team fight and you secure 1 pick and it's a 6v5 now, that's a huge advantage, and that's so much more useful than getting a 3k when half your team is dead and you can't win the fight anyway.
I had an idea, an image in my brain when you said you wanted to talk about this on the show. You know the meme of like the different galaxy brain levels, where it's like level 1,
Yeah.
and it's like a little tiny spark in the brain. It just goes out from there. I was thinking about that, and it's like level 1 when you first start playing. I think level 1 is use your ult on cooldown, which is not the worst advice in the world. It kind of is going the other way of being too precious about when you use it. And honestly, if you use it on cooldown, you're maximizing your uptime of your ult. Like, if you get to ult, 4 times in a game, and your average opponent ults twice, you've got a little bit of an advantage there, probably.
Yeah.
And then I think next level on Galaxy Brain is ult with your team. Like, use your ults together. Like, it sounds so stupid because it's a team-based game, but if you just fight as a team, you will put yourself head and shoulders above most people, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I like you're saying, if you ult with your team, even if you're just ulting with them existing there to follow up on your ult, that's huge. If you start to combo ult with your team, that's a whole nother step, right? There are certain combinations you can get that will secure a team fight super easily. And you're never going to make that happen if you are out there 1v3ing and just tossing your ult out to try to do your own thing.
For sure. I would say, too, think about who the problem champs are and use your ult aggressively on them. Like, if you can take out supports with your ult, just do it. Like, seize that beautiful dream, chase that rainbow, kill a Mercy. Yeah,
and an ult to solo kill a Mercy is definitely worth it.
Yeah, that's maximum brain. Anything that kills a Mercy. Those are my thoughts. You got anything else?
No, I mean, that's essentially it from my perspective. Again, I'm taking it from a very general perspective, and you can certainly, if there's one specific champ, dear listener, that you'd like us to talk about, we can do that, and I think we can get into more specific details, specific situations based on that if we wanted to. But
there's all kinds of things to talk about.
Yeah. From a very broad perspective, for me personally, I think that covers a good approach to how and when you should be using your ult.
For sure. Weirdly, I think the champions that have kind of the weaker ults overall are the more interesting to talk about how to deploy them and when to deploy them. Like, you've got Symmetra with the giant map covering shield. When and how to use that is like, it takes a little bit of thought to maximize it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other good examples of weird Widowmaker.
There's some that are just like almost throwaways at the ranks that we play at. I was thinking of Widowmaker specifically, where it's like the idea of her ultimate is that you're going to see through walls and be able to get these sneak attack shots on people. But for the most part, the team probably doesn't really use that to that high of an advantage, and that's one that I would use on cooldown, frankly.
Yeah.
Especially at the ranks we're at, because it's going to build up however fast it does. Just throw it down. You can see where the enemy is and just kind of
just get some more info.
Work accordingly. Yeah, exactly.
But that's getting into the weeds. We can save that for another time.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. All right. Well, I am going to go fetch Veronica so that I can introduce the next segment, the breakdown, and we'll start the intro for the next bit there. Sounds good?
Yep.
Hello, it's me, Corbin. Why should you listen to Dames and Dragons D&D Actual Play podcast found on iTunes, Google Play, and more, you ask? Because, my friend, if you're a crow living in a giant featherless body, and who isn't, you will adore this show! It's relatable, it's funny, it's full of crows, mainly one, who is me. It's original, it's fast-paced, it's worms, it's corn chips. I'm hungry. Be sure to listen to Dames and Dragons while I get a snack.
And that brings us to this week's breakdown.
Oh, let's break it down! Why are you so angry?
And this week, we have a special guest with us to talk about our game of choice. I'll introduce the game first, and then I'll introduce our guest. So today we're going to be talking about a co-op only game called It Takes Two. This is a Silverlight Studios game. No, excuse me, Hazelight Studios game that my wife and I, Veronica, found and played through fairly recently. And
Veronica, come on down.
that's right. Our special guest today is Veronica. So welcome to the show.
I'm still not used to you calling me your wife.
It's been almost like 2 years now.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
This is my betrothed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So
It is funny to say thanks for joining us when you're in the same house
Yeah.
all the time.
yeah,
I'm
well,
just sitting on our couch.
you're joining Kenny and I virtually here, and we're here to talk about a fun game, a game that
We
and
treasure
I-
you as a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that you'll be back on at some point. Well, we'll see how today goes. I guess. Who knows?
Yeah, I was going to say. Consider this to be kind of an audition of sorts.
Yeah, this could be your one and only, depending on how it goes. So
No pressure.
shape up.
Jesus.
As I said, we're going to talk about the game It Takes Two, which is a co-op only game that we played through pretty recently. And I guess to start, we should just kind of describe what the game is in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I am a perfect audience member here because I have not played this game. I know little about it.
Which is wonderful. So the game is about a couple. It's about these two people, Cody and May, and their daughter Rose. And Cody and May are going through the beginnings of a divorce, and their daughter Rose is upset about this. And so the beginning of the game, the intro cutscenes basically are kind of detailing this. And the daughter Rose's sadness magically turns mom and dad into some dolls that then are on a mission throughout the game to figure out how to get turned back into real people. So the story is kind of crazy, and we're going to talk a lot more about the story later is my plan. What I would like to talk about...
It's a very liar kind of setup.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, definitely. The child's wishes are manifesting in the real world. But I want to talk first and foremost, I want to talk about the gameplay itself. Because I personally really, really loved the gameplay for this. It was probably the coolest straight co-op game that I've ever played. So, Veronica, I will ask you what you thought of the gameplay.
Thank you, Matt, for asking me that. I really like the gameplay. I think that you tend to be a little bit more controlling during games that we try to play together, and so this one is a true co-op, so you truly have to work together to beat the bosses, to get through to the different levels. And I think you and I both, at certain points during the game, were kind of just in awe of the graphics. I mean, there's like an entire level in space, and we're just like, holy crap, like this is so detailed. And there's another one where you're like in the sound waves almost. Do you remember for May's hobby that, she's trying to conquer or whatever? So I just felt like it was a true co-op. I couldn't play it without him, and I definitely wanted to. So it really forced you to play together.
Yeah, I did very much like that. It was structured in a way where you both had to contribute. You both had to be doing your part at the various puzzle portions of the levels or even the bosses in order to progress. Yeah, one of you couldn't carry the team through. You literally both had to play.
It's almost as if it takes two to make a thing go right.
Yeah, they really ham-fisted it in there.
So I have a follow-up question to that. You both really need to be working together to do whatever your thing is. Does this open up possibilities for trolling each other?
Yeah, you definitely could troll each other if that's what you were into.
Why would you do that?
Did that happen?
No, I don't think so. We honestly we worked together pretty well, and I was thinking about this as we were talking about it. It never got to a point where it was exceedingly like frustrating from one player's perspective of what the other player was doing. And in general, like, the mechanics of the game weren't super intensive. It's not going to be the most difficult game you've ever played by any means. But because they made it a requirement to work together, it still made it enjoyable because you couldn't just sit there and whoop through it yourself. Again, you had to work together, you had to talk about it. Yeah, there was no trolling as far as I can remember.
I think I went into this when Matt told me about this game. The only other co-op game that we had done is Overcooked, and that almost ruined our relationship and ended a almost to be marriage at that point. So I did go into it a little scared at what this would do to us, but this one was a lot more. I mean, there's a lot of like puzzles and things that you figure out that we worked really well together. Honestly, I feel like it strengthened our relationship.
I want to be.
Do you feel like it healed the damage that Overcooked did?
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to be clear that our relationship was never like on the precipice of failure from playing Overcooked.
Maybe not from your perspective.
Playing Overcooked definitely had its bad moments, and we have definitely stopped playing Overcooked 2 because it becomes too much for us. And this game was not like that.
No, it wasn't.
Not as much screaming.
No.
See, I think one of the problems with Overcooked is that it taps into Matt's like kitchen brain, and he wants to, he wants to be the manager of the kitchen.
Yeah, you touched on it already, Veronica. I want to be in control, and in Overcooked, it's like I want to be the one telling you what to do and telling me what to do. And as soon as you don't want to listen to me, well, it's game over. We're not going to do well.
And in this game, like Overcooked, you can play one player. You don't need two people, although I think it's impossible. But
yeah, I've never even tried.
This game, you can't even start the game without two people signing in.
That was one thing that I wanted to touch on that I think is a really cool feature of this game. The way they sell it, so if you wanted to play this game with your friend online, only one of you has to buy it. And there's basically a free download for the other person, and it's the opposite side of it. You can't really start the game, but you can join in the game and play co-op with them without investing any money in the actual game, which I thought was a super cool feature for a game that is just styled to be this way. It makes it so much easier to just an easier barrier to entry. You're not both spending $40 or whatever it is. One of you can do it. You can have your friend play with you, enjoy it. If they like it, maybe they'll go buy it and have somebody else play with them. Who knows?
I think that's good of them, but also smart of them from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that it would have done very well if you had to convince whoever you're playing. Imagine, you're a married couple, we have to buy 2 copies of the game or something like that.
Well, yeah, so if you're a married couple, you can literally play local on the same screen.
Sure.
But yeah, if you want to play with anybody who's not in the same room as you, then you have to download the game, and they made it so it's free so that you can do that without any additional impact, which I thought was very cool.
You two should definitely play it, because Matt would just play May, and then you could play the other dude.
Nah, I think from a replayability standpoint, it's I don't know that I would ever replay it.
Really?
Yeah.
So it must not be that great of a game.
It's a really fun game. The story is... I'll be interested. I'll ask you. How do you feel about the story?
It was it definitely had its twists and turns. There was, I don't know if we want to get into the one part of the storyline that I just don't understand why it was there. I think if you talk to anyone else who's played this game, they'll bring this part up, but there's a pretty horrific scene where you're dismembering a baby elephant and then you're throwing them off of a ledge. It's supposed to be like the princess elephant. It's the daughter's absolute favorite stuffed animal. And you're trying to get your daughter to cry because you think that her tears are what's going to make you an adult. And so we're like dragging this elephant who's screaming like, please don't kill me. And she's getting stuck on nails. So her arm comes off, her leg comes off. And Matt and I, the entire time, like, we have to do it together. We have to together drag her. And we're just like, why? Why are we doing this? This is extremely horrific. And they never touched on that again. You never talk about it. You don't come back to it. And so I kept looking for this, like, they're going to close the loop on this. Like, we're going to come back. Like, Princess Elephant is going to be okay. Like, at the end of this, we're going to buy her a new one. Like, that's what we said we were going to do, and they don't even show that. So, I was pretty upset with that part.
See, I never got that invested in it, like, worrying about how we were going to resolve that. It was honestly just one of the most, like, it's earlier in the game, and you and well, Cody, I was Cody, she was May, you two together are basically short-sighted and saying, we think we need to make her cry in order to get out of this mess, so we'll do whatever it takes. And yeah, just like she described, it is this horrific thing where you're literally dragging a very nice, pleasant stuffed animal elephant to her death to make your own daughter cry. And what I would say is that was honestly like one of the highlights of the story in retrospect, because there was at least something going on there, and it was weird, and it was like I don't. It's not as forgettable as the rest of it. The rest of it felt very, hit you over the head with it. We're a couple who's going to get divorced. We're a couple who's going to get divorced, and then later on, it's we're starting to like each other again. And then with the grand conclusion, obviously, being when you find your passion, and they both find their passions and stuff, they go find their daughter at the bus stop and bring her home from trying to run away.
I have to disagree with you. I liked this story. This isn't a game that I'm going to play for the story mode. It's not like The Last of Us where I'm like heavily invested in the storyline. This game is like, okay, it takes two. It sets it up in the beginning. Okay, these people are going to get divorced. The daughter's sad. You know that you're going to do a bunch of crap to get you guys back together. Like, the main little thing is like a book of love that's taking you through all these tests for your relationship and
Dr.
stuff.
Hakim.
So I went into it not being so much like, okay, I need the story to be amazing. I was more like, okay, then I want the gameplay to be awesome.
I agree with that. I was never invested in the story at any point, really, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I would play it again.
It wasn't that wasn't the part that made me want to play it.
I think you could play it again because you never played May. And so that's a whole other character that you would have to learn.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I could play a whole other character. I think in general, so you touched on Dr. Hakim, which he is a hilarious character. He's literally a book of love who's like this Latin guy who is just like forcing you into these situations the entire time and like trying to get your relationship back up. And
it's like a marriage counselor.
Yeah, exactly. A marriage therapist, basically. And his character is hilarious because he's so over the top and ridiculous. Some of the other characters or NPCs, whatever you want to call them, throughout the game are crazy. Like, there's basically like these militant squirrels who end up like shooting machine guns at you at one point. Just like all of a sudden they're like, fuck you guys, and start shooting machine guns at you. So there's these wacky twists and turns of the story that are
there's an angry vacuum that you never fixed that is upset with you. A toolbox that you stopped using that gets really angry. That's one of the bosses. A plant. Like, everything that you neglect.
I see. It's very interesting, because the only things I knew about this game were, like, it's co-op only game, and you're going through basically a bunch of almost like mini games, playing together a bunch of different shit. You could have made that with no story.
Yeah.
You could have just said, it's just a ton of interesting mini games with wacky stuff going on, and that would have been, I think, fine. But they decided to hang this very, like as Veronica's saying, a simple story, but also a very like serious story on top of all these mini games. Did you feel like those two things worked against each other? Like, you've got this kind of serious subject matter, and then these goofy ass like squirrel machine gun levels that you're doing.
Definitely, I felt like it was almost like a distraction. Like, I got so into the gameplay, and then you would do something and you're like, sweet, all right, like, let's go to the next level. And then it'd be like a 3 or 4 minute story break. And it's like, okay, don't really care about this. You watch a little girl walk through her house depressed. Yeah, like, and
literally.
her parents are like, they're dolls. So they're just sitting there glass-eyed, and she's like trying to engage with them.
Like comatose.
Yeah, and she's like, Dad, look at my plant. And he's like not responding. She's like, okay, like I'll just go kill myself then. She doesn't say that, but it's really sad.
Now let's go fight some rubber duckies. Whoa!
It would have definitely been better and simpler to be just like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing, where it's like, oh no, crazy experiment, we're tiny, let's figure out how to get out of this, and then just forget about the rest of the divorce stuff.
And like come back to it at the end or something.
But just don't even, just get big again and you win the game, like it didn't need to have the weight that they tried to assign to it, I don't think.
Yeah.
Interesting. So overall, we have not done this before. Out of 10, what would you rate this game, Veronica?
Ooh, out of 10. So, like, I have to compare it to other co-op games I played.
Did you like it more or less than Overcooked?
I like it less than Overcooked. I love Overcooked. That's one that I would keep playing, but I don't know if that will ever happen. I would give it like a 7 out of 10. I really liked the gameplay. I think it's a beautiful game. Like there's just so much obvious like development that went into it. So I would play it with you, Kenny. Like I would totally play this game again. I think it's a lot of fun to play with somebody. But it's not my favorite co-op game out there.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I think a 7 out of 10 is a perfect spot for it. The game is awesome. You go from like level to level. You have to learn a new mechanic. There's boss fights at the end of most of them that have their own mechanics. And all of that, every single one of those was like cool in its own way. Like there's one thing in my mind that stands out, like the squirrel machine gun stuff we were talking about. When you're escaping from them, all of a sudden Cody is flying an airplane and May is in literally like a Mortal Kombat style fighting game with a squirrel and has to beat a squirrel boss on top of the plane in order for you to proceed. And it's just, that is unique throughout the entire thing. It's just totally different. They just sprinkle it on there. And it feels natural how you get there. It teaches you the simple buttons you need to do it. And it's kind of rewarding because, yeah, you probably lose the first time or two, and then you figure it out and you learn it and you proceed. There's a whole nother section where one of you is a wizard and one is like a knight, and you basically have like role-playing game abilities all of a sudden. Like it maps out these buttons for you, and you've got moves and stuff. So it's dynamic, and it changes into new interesting stuff each section. They're simple enough to learn, but complicated enough that they're still fun. And I mean, it kept us coming back every night until we beat the game, which was probably like 4 or 5 nights total.
Did you find it distracting at being a split screen?
No, I don't really have a problem with the split screen.
Weren't we on opposite sides?
That was part of our problem, was that I was on the left, you were on the right from a seated perspective, and then our people were on the opposite side.
We never changed it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's nothing we can do about that.
We've got designated spots on the couch. Yeah, that was kind of our own fault. But yeah, I would agree. I think it's a 7 out of 10. I think the gameplay was really cool. I think the story was whatever. And I would recommend it to people who like co-op games and have somebody to play with.
Well, you're comparing this co-op to like a Bloodborne or something.
No, I would not compare it to a Bloodborne.
You can do co-op in Bloodborne.
You can, and that's a whole other episode to talk about. I don't think they're anywhere in the same.
I think your point here is that this is designed to be co-op, not only first and foremost, but
only.
Exclusively.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a cool concept. I feel like that as a developer, you kind of back yourself into a corner in lots of ways too, right? Your audience has to be couples, not like literally dating couples, but like a couple of people as your audience, right? And
that's probably why they do the cross. Like you can do online free if you have it, somebody else can play with you for free.
Yeah, which again I think is a super cool feature, and I think.
Is it free or is it like $1?
I'm pretty sure it was free. I'm pretty sure it's 100% free. Fact check me.
Yep, you're right.
we can confirm that, but I'm pretty sure it's completely free, and I think that's a cool feature. This game led us to get the other game that this studio produced, which I think we can talk about in a different episode someday, maybe. I didn't really like it that much.
I'd say it's not worth an episode.
Yeah, it's not worth buying for sure, and I think it would be funny to talk about because of how freaking ridiculous
shitty
it is. The play of the game that I gave in a different episode was from this game, A Way Out, and that was the game that came before this, and they did a lot of positive things to make It Takes Two 1,000 times better.
Not as
That's great.
backstabby.
Not as trolly.
Yeah.
Well,
that's about it.
I think that that was a good discussion.
All I've got to say about It Takes Two. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No. I'm just so happy that I'm here with you all. I made the trip, up to this room, so
up from the couch.
Yeah, just really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We do have one last thing to ask of you, however.
Oh, okay.
It's true, yeah. So this week, you are the vote on who wins the play of the game.
Okay.
So we'll give you a quick recap of the plays of the game.
I guess, okay, my question is for the player of the game. Is it a true player of the game, or is it, I thought it was like the intangible, so it's what's supported?
So you want to hear our arguments for why we said these were each play of the game?
I do.
Intangible play of the game? So for Mansour Bahrami, I think, as we said, he's past his prime. He's no longer in the actual pro scene. He's in exhibition games, but he brings the showmanship. What makes him great is that he is there to entertain, and he's great at that. The bravado that he brings to the plays is special above and beyond just how impressive he is at the game. Like, he really knows how to work the crowd. Like, that's the intangible for me.
So he probably adds to, like, people coming to Wimbledon because they want to see him.
I mean, I would want to go see him for sure.
Right. And you?
I gave it to literally the card, the Blightsteel Colossus, because had I not drawn at that turn, I would have lost the game.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Kenny.
Hey.
Sorry. But I have some I have some feels about
me playing Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's we correctly predicted how this is going to go. early in the episode, we correctly assumed that you would, no matter what Kenny's was, knowing that mine was Magic, you would trash me. And well, here we are. Congratulations to Kenny and
congratulations to Mansour
Bahrami for the play of the game.
Yeah. Round of applause.
Woo! Excellent. Well, that wraps it up for this week's episode of The Intangibles. I want to thank Veronica again for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, Veronica.
Thank you so much, Kenny, for having me.
Join us next week for our ASMR. I'm Matt.
I'm Veronica.
I'm Kenny.
And that's all of us. I'll let Kenny do
Stay intangible.
Yeah, I'll let Kenny do the Twitter and ats and stuff if there are any.
So if you want to get in touch with us, Matt is barely online at all. So I am at Wolfmere on Twitter, and you can just throw in the hashtag #TheIntangibles, and that will bring the show right to my attention.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Get good, white play.
GG.
WP.